Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today I wanted to go over a recommendation I got on my Discord server, which was housing gauntlets, to go over them, to go over which ones are worth it, which ones are, even remotely worth doing, and I figured this was a pretty good idea. I've gone over whether the one-time housing gauntlets are worth it in the past, like the Exalt, the duels, and whatnot, and I think you guys liked that video, not sure. Today I figured I'd go over the permanent ones, go over which ones may be worth buying, and which ones could be helpful to you. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Starting off, what is a housing gauntlet and why might you be interested in it? Well, a housing gauntlet is usually bought from a bundle, the ones online for $29.99 or $39.99. Usually they're in the $39.99 ones, so be prepared to spend $40 on them. Obviously the bundles give like usually a mount, 5,000 crowns, gear set, a pet, and then potentially the housing gauntlet itself. Now, these gauntlets are interesting and unique compared to the one-time ones because they will stay in your house forever. They can be used as many times as you want and farmed as many times as you want. So you can see here, I actually have two. I have the Grand Tourney Arena and the Spiral Cup Gauntlet. Really, both some cool dungeons that give interesting drops. They tend to drop gear from a certain pack, so I'll go over the packs later on, but the Grand Tourney Arena, for example, gives Horde of the Hydra pack drops, which is pretty cool. It's interesting, and it's a way to get pack gear without actually farming the pack. So that's one interesting thing about them. Another one that I want to mention before going into the individual gauntlets themselves is the actual XP. These can be used as a quite decent XP farm, especially at earlier levels. So basically there's 5 tiers of these dungeons, if you don't know, from levels 1 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, and 80 to 100. So each of them has their own unique instance. It's basically the exact same thing, just at level 20, they're very weak bosses, and at level 100, they're at bigger bosses. It always goes based on the lowest level character in the gauntlet. So if you bring your level 1 expecting to do a level 100 dungeon for the XP, you're not going to get it. You're only going to get the first tier one. Some of them actually do give quite a lot of XP, especially around the level 100 range. So if you decided that you wanted to get some quick levels on your character and boost your character up, I'm pretty sure at level 80 you could get from level 80 to around 85 if you did all of these gauntlets. So really just a cool way to get some extra XP, and that's the main gist of these. So without further ado, let's get into the actual video itself, which is going over individually which ones are worth it. How I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be using the Final Bastion page for these because Final Bastion is really good on that. It gives a good way to collect the data, show you what's dropped from it, and I can tell you whether it's worth it or not. So starting off, let's go over the Midnight Sun Pagoda. This one is Mushu themed and is kind of designed as a tower. So you go from level to level, actually beating a lot of things. You can see the first floor is health and mana wisps, then it goes 4 mobs, a boss fight with 3 minions, 4 mobs, a puzzle floor, 4 bosses, and then 3 cheating bosses and 1 minion. If I remember correctly, the cheating boss isn't too bad. Obviously, you can look up the cheats for it themselves, but it's not that bad of an instance itself. In terms of the drop, a lot of them are from the Kieran's Horde pack, so you can get 2 sets of gear. You can get the dragon pets, you can get the fiendish food dog pets, which are pretty cool. You can get some mega snacks, and you can get some cool wands. Now, in regards to XP, I believe the highest instance of this gives around 50,000. So in terms of XP, it's not one of the better XP ones, but it does drop some interesting drops. So if you want, you can actually go farm that. This dungeon doesn't actually drop the mounts, so if you're looking for the mounts, sadly you can't actually get the Kieran's Horde pack mounts from this dungeon. At least I don't believe so. You might be able to get one-day versions, not entirely sure, but I don't believe you're able to get the mounts. But I would say that this dungeon is probably one of the lesser ones that's worth to get, simply just because it doesn't really give that XP buff, and a lot of the gear from this isn't actually that valuable in my opinion. A lot of it's pretty meh, but if you actually like the look of any of it, potentially it could be used for stitch gear. If you don't know, the Rokugo sets have that like samurai look to them, so if you're interested in the samurai look, this could potentially be one to get. I don't know when it comes back, but it could potentially come back soon. Next up, we have the Winterbane Hall, and I'm sure a lot of people know this dungeon. This one is iconic. Everyone knows Winterbane. It's again shaped like a tower, has some mobs, has some bosses, and really is decently easy as long as you know what you're doing. I will say this one is definitely one that is more on the worth it side. First off, it gives quite a massive amount of XP. I believe at the max level dungeon, it gives 200 or 300k, so that could potentially be useful as well. It also drops stuff from the Raven's Horde pack, which is pretty cool. I know that the tier 1 stuff actually gives critical, so if you want stuff that you can critical at a very low level on, this could potentially be good. Also, the Raven Sword pack hasn't been in the crown shop for a very long time, so if you actually want like the look of that bow or the look of that robe that you can see there as it's cycling through, you can get it from here. There's also a dragon pet, which is pretty cool. Is it really worth the pet itself? None of the pets, in my opinion, here are really worth it, but they're pretty interesting. The main appeal of the Winterbane Gauntlet itself is actually the Mega Snacks. The Mega Snacks from here are dropped quite frequently, and it's actually notorious for that. So if you want, I would say Winterbane is actually worth it in that regard. Overall, Winterbane, I would give it like a, you can buy it. It's pretty good if you do. It's not the best of the gauntlets. It has the potential to be pretty good if you want it. Whether or not you actually get it's up to you, but it's pretty cool. Next is the Spiral Cup Gauntlet, which is actually the one I own. This one gives quite a lot of XP, so if you're looking for the XP gains, this one could be potentially worth it to get. This one is shaped similar to the actual Spiral Cup tournament from Wisteria itself. You fight a bunch of mobs in the arena, and then you actually fight the cheating boss and kind of save the day. Honestly, this doesn't give too many drops. It gives the Green Warden's energetic set, which is a good set of energy gear at level 100. So if you potentially want some energy gear, it might be worth it for that reason. It also gives the Spiral Cup set, which if you don't know, that's actually what my Fire's boots are. So if you're looking to copy my Fire's Stitch, this could potentially be good for the boots itself, but the pets aren't really worth it. Honestly, a lot of this isn't really worth it. This is one of the lesser ones. This one, really, the only reason you get it is probably for the XP or if you wanted to copy my Fire's Stitch. Realistically, there's that. And the reason why I wouldn't say to get it for the energy is there's actually some better energy sets that you can get from other housing gauntlets. So again, that's up to you, but that's my opinion on the Spiral Cup Gauntlet. Next is the Grand Tourney Arena, which is one I own, which is actually really cool. Fun fact about this one, this is actually based on a Game of Thrones reference, and it's not even like a very common one to know, which really impresses me. Someone knows their lore. It's based on, I believe, the Tourney of Ashford Meadow, if I remember properly, which is like a decently obscure tourney that was mentioned maybe a few times in the actual books itself. I don't think it's mentioned in the show at all. So props to whoever did the lore on this one. It's just pretty cool if you actually know the references itself, but this one is actually pretty easy. It has some mob fights, some cheating bosses, really easy to do. This one, I will say, is actually probably one of the best ones to get. First off, it gives quite a bit of XP. So if you're looking for the XP, it gives like 300, 400k, I believe, which is really good at level 100 and really good to do in that regard. But the real interesting thing from this is actually the gear itself. It drops a decently good energy set. In fact, it's one of the better energy sets that you can get around level 100. So if you don't want to waste time on packs, you can actually get that as well. You can get the mandolin weapons, which look really cool, some mega snacks, which obviously are good, but it's just overall a pretty cool one. And I would say it's actually decently worth getting if you want that energy gear or if you want the mandolin stitch, if only for those things themselves. But I will say it's worth it in a lot of other regards as well. So again, it's up to you. I would say this one is one of the most worth it out of all of them. Next is the Great Clock Gauntlet, which is actually one of the shortest gauntlets you can see. It's just a few mob fights and then 2 boss fights. Actually pretty easy. This one drops some stuff from the Phoenix Horde pack, which if you didn't know was kind of a mediocre pack that used to be in the crown shop. I actually really don't recommend the gear from any of this. I know that the wands give a lot of pierce, but they don't give damage if I remember properly. Apparently it drops a lot of treasure cards that are very handy for PvP. I don't exactly know because I am not a PvP player, but if any of these PvP cards interest you, this could potentially be a way to get that. But it also drops some pets that I've seen used a lot. So if you want one of those pets like the Clockwork Paladin or the Bronze Golem, I'm pretty sure I've seen both of them used semi-frequently. I would say that they're actually semi-decent pets. I don't remember exactly why, but they're decent. This one actually doesn't give almost any XP at all. So if you're looking for an XP one, this one is not good in that regard. I would say this one is mainly for people who like PvP and want those treasure cards, or who want those pets. Realistically, most of the other stuff is pretty mediocre. So next up is the fantastic Voyage Expedition Gauntlet. This one is actually pretty interesting and unique because it drops a unique elixir that actually gives you fishing luck called Cousteau's Fishing Elixir, I believe. Really an interesting way if you want some fishing luck, and I believe you can get that every time you finish the dungeon. Yeah, so every time you finish the dungeon, you actually get that fishing luck elixir, which gives 33% fishing luck. So if you're into fishing, that is an interesting little drop and tidbit from this. You can see it just has a few mob battles and then a cheating boss. Not that bad in of itself, but what are the drops? Well, the XP is actually insane from this dungeon. I believe it has the highest XP count out of any House and Gauntlet dungeon in this game. So if you want it for the XP, there you go. In terms of other things, there's not really much. There's a few pets, a housing item, and then some mega snacks. Realistically, there's nothing super good, and that's mainly because it's based on the Islanders Horde pack, and the Islanders Horde pack is actually garbage. So realistically, the main reason why you'd want to get this is for the XP or fishing luck elixir. There's also some fish that are dropped here. I don't know if any of them are actually particularly good. Someone will have to let me know, but I really doubt that they're anything super special. This, I would say, is mainly for the fishing luck or XP. Next up is the Accursed Play Gauntlet, and this one is another short one and definitely goes pretty fast. In terms of XP, it doesn't really give anything, so if you're looking for that, don't get it. But what it does give is it does give some interesting drops. First off, it gives stuff from the Dragon's Horde pack, which is one of the cooler packs in this game. It doesn't actually give anything good, but it's just cool. I remember as a kid, the gear looked super cool. So if you want that, there's that. I believe that this actually drops the energy version of it, which is not the best energy gear set in this game by any margin. If you want an energy gear set, again, do the actual Grand Tourney Arena, but it does drop that, which is interesting. It drops the Dragon Wings permanent mount. So if you want the actual Dragon Wings mount, that is pretty good itself. And the biggest thing from this dungeon is it drops a Pigsy treasure card, and it obviously it's not guaranteed, but it drops Pigsy treasure cards, which again are really good. So if you want that, if you want to craft Pigsy, this is actually a way to get it. It's probably dropped more frequently here than it is from Lore Master. So if you don't want to farm Lore Master for it, this is actually a decent way to get it, but I wouldn't say that this one is particularly good for anything else. The Dragon Riders gear is pretty cool. I might buy it just purely from that if it ever comes up in the store, but I would say it's not that worth it. Next up, we have Sinbad and the Iron Sultan. This one is pretty interesting, I will say so myself. It doesn't drop any XP, so if that's what you're looking for, you're not going to get it here. But this one actually does drop something really interesting, which is the actual gear from the Sinbad's Horde pack. The reason why you might want this is that these wands for 130 are actually really solid. The universal one gives like 17 damage, 5 pierce, some decent crit. It's really a decent set and a decent wands. So if you want that, that's pretty good. It also drops the rock mount, which gives a permanent 3% power pip. So if you're looking to max out your power pip, that's an interesting way to do it. Obviously, it's not as good as the damage mounts, but it's pretty good in of itself. This one I would say is actually really good for the gear set and the wands in of itself if you want those. But I would say realistically, the pets aren't that good. The rock mount is only subpar, and beyond that, there isn't too much you'd want in terms of XP. This one's just really good for the wands. So if you want those, pretty good in of itself, but otherwise not that good. Next up is the Doomsday Krok Gauntlet. Now this one is actually pretty interesting in terms of it gives some revamped Krok textures, which as you can see look really sick. I would love if they went back and changed some of it to look like this. This looks amazing, as you can see, and honestly I would hope that in a graphics revamp, they could get some stuff to look like this. Now, it has some mob fights, some elite fights, some boss fights. Nothing too bad. If you want XP, again, this gauntlet does not give XP. If you're buying them for XP, this one is not the way to go. This does give some interesting drops though, I would say. First off, it gives some gear sets, which I don't think are actually anything too special, but it does drop the mounts. So if you want the mounts, this is an interesting way to get them, and you can get them from, I believe it's a secret boss, so you can actually get it from there, and that's just pretty solid. Realistically, this one is if you want the mounts for some reason. I don't think it drops anything too good beyond that. Again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't drop anything good besides that. Hello everyone, I'm back. I'm recording this afterwards because as I'm editing this video, I realized I completely forgot a housing gauntlet because it wasn't actually on the Final Bastion website because the article came out before it was released. This is actually the Great Skytrain Robbery Gauntlet. Now this one, I will say, while it looks cool, gives absolutely nothing. In fact, it really gives so few drops that I actually consider just not even mentioning it because, to be completely honest, it's just that bad. It looks really cool, but it doesn't give XP. The enemies barely drop anything, and really it's just like there's no point in even doing it or getting it. I will say the only thing that is actually worth it in this entire gauntlet, to be completely honest, is that the final boss actually drops a P9 elixir. If you didn't know, that resets your hatching timer. But, and this is a big amendum, it is dropped extremely infrequently. In fact, to the point where I don't even know if it's worth farming it for them. It's actually that bad. So realistically, this is not worth it in the slightest. No XP, no real drops. This is the only thing it drops. Yeah, I mean, get it if you want. But that was the last of the gauntlets. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with my opinions on which ones are worth it? And is there anything I somehow missed? To give kind of a final statement on these, I would say none of them are necessary. If you don't want them, none of them are necessary, but especially some of them could be pretty useful, like the Grand Tourney Arena for the energy set, and some of them for the XP to just get a little bit over leveled around level 80 or so. They can be pretty good in that regard, but otherwise nothing too special and nothing I would blow $40 on. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Which ones do you have? Which ones do you think are worth it? But that's it. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Adios.